The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're pleased to have Delegate Jennifer Boysko with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Woody. I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's been about 10 days so far. I know it's fast and furious. Tell us how things are going so far from your perspective.
Sure, things are going fine. I have been pleased that we got off to a good start on a positive note. I was very impressed with the governor's State of the Commonwealth address, and I'm continuing to look for ways to work across the aisle, to work with my colleagues to help make things better in Virginia.
What are some of the more significant things you took from the State of the Commonwealth address?
Well, for one, our economy is stronger than it was when Governor McAuliffe started. He's brought on so many jobs here in Virginia, despite the fact that we are going through sequestration in Virginia. He's brought in new businesses. The new Virginia economy is growing. He's been focusing on technology, which is the heart of my district. In the 86th district, we have the Center for Innovative Technology, we have Dulles Airport, we have Cox Communication, as well as a host of technology companies. And so I'm always happy to hear when we have a governor that supports and makes that a high priority.
And of course, he's done a lot of work in the international arena in order to attract businesses here as well.
He has, and it's paid off. If you look at the number of jobs that have come in. In fact, one of the things that he's made a very strong point of is saying that Virginia is open for everyone and it's a friendly and welcoming place. We have companies from North Carolina who have not been so happy in North Carolina, who have decided to come up here in Virginia where everyone is welcome. And that's something that I feel is very important as well.
Now tell us a little bit more about your district. Where does it lie, the geographic boundaries,
Sure.
the diversity within it?
I have a wonderful district. It's in the heart of it is in the town of Herndon and the surrounding areas, Sterling Park in Loudoun County, Oak Hill, parts of Chantilly, and just a tiny bit of Reston. It's very close to Dulles Airport. And if you look at the demographics, it's beautifully diverse. It's about 50% minority, so 21% Asian American, a great number of Indian Americans, Pakistanis, Muslim members of the Muslim community, 21% Latin American from all countries in the Central and South America, and 8% African American. So it's really, you can meet someone from any part of the world in my community, and that's something that I really love about it most.
I imagine that there are a lot of different languages spoken in the public schools there.
There are, yes. In fact, some of our schools are, 40% English as second language learners. So it's really, my children graduated from Herndon High School, and they did have friends from every corner of the globe. And I think that just gives them a leg up as they grow up and learn about being a part of the world.
Now, is this your second term here?
This is my second year here.
Okay.
I was elected in 2015.
And so what was your background and experience before you came to the General Assembly?
I have always been in public service. My first job was on Capitol Hill working for Richard Shelby from Alabama, which is where I was from. I spent a number of years as a stay-at-home mom, and most recently, over the past six or so years before I became a member of the House of Delegates, I worked for the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, working as the representative for my member in my community, so helping people solve their problems, helping connect folks with resources, and being that face and that voice for the folks in my part of the Drainsville district in
So I
Fairfax
take it
County.
that experience helping constituents on the local level and the things you learned as a representative of local government helps you here.
It absolutely does. It's just kind of another step. So now I'm the one who gets to make sure that all of our constituents are being listened to and making sure that we're making those connections when they need help. It's a really most fulfilling part of the job for me.
And you're on two committees, I believe, privileges and elections in
Elections.
counties, cities, and towns.
That's right.
So how has that worked out in terms of representing your constituents?
Well, I live in the town of Herndon. It's one of the few areas that has an actual town. And so I'm able to advocate for the town's needs very well. And my background in Fairfax County gives me the background to understand what we're looking at when other localities and municipalities are asking for help in the General Assembly. So I feel really on top of it. I also have a long history of election activities and served as a precinct captain on the front lines on Election Day for the past 15 years. So I'm also very pleased to be a part of the Privileges and Elections Committee where we're really making some very important decisions.
Yeah, issues around voter identification, for example,
Yes.
absentee voting, those kinds of things come before that committee.
That's correct. And I am someone who believes that we need to make voting easier. There is no significant evidence of voter fraud in Virginia. We should be making it open and accessible to everyone because everyone deserves to have a voice in our electoral process.
Now, what about redistricting in general? Right now, the General Assembly has the sole authority to redraw boundaries every 10 years.
Well, I certainly respect that that's been our history. However, I have the perspective that we shouldn't be creating our own districts. We should have a nonpartisan, independent commission like it's done in other states. And that's something that I'm supporting. Our Delegate Toscano, the Democratic leader, has asked that we have a vote on the floor this year. I'm supportive of that. I believe that we need to look at the way we're doing the districting and make it fair for everybody.
I believe Delegate Landis has a proposal
He
as well,
does.
does he not? It's
Yes.
a little bit different from what
Right.
Delegate Toscano would like to see.
And it's a first step, and I'm very happy about it. In fact, right before I came here, I was meeting with a group of folks. It's Virginia 2021, and they are supportive of the redistricting, and they are supporting that bill. I'm very pleased that Delegate Landis has come forward with that, and I expect that I will be supporting it as well.
What about increased transparency here? I know last year there was a move by a member of the House and a member of the Senate. Actually, they formed a transparency caucus.
They did, yes. Well, one of the things that I found most surprising when I got here was that all the major work happens at the subcommittee level, and then there is no recorded vote required at the subcommittee level. I think we're better off if there is sunlight. And I know that there is a nonprofit group called Progress Virginia who have been bringing fellows in to film subcommittees. And I found that people are behaving really politely to one another. And when I'm presenting my bills, it's a nice thing, I think.
So that work at the subcommittee level is critical
It
if
is.
you're pursuing legislation there.
It is, and a lot of people don't realize that sometimes I was presenting a bill that would have required background checks for everyone last week before the police militia committee. Thank you. And there were 4 members in that committee, 1 Democrat and 3 Republicans. And I couldn't get anybody to second the motion because there was no one. I'm a Democrat, and no one else would even second it. So it was dead, even though, 80% of the people in Virginia believe that a background check is a smart thing to do. So the power is in the subcommittee, not at the full committee, not on the floor. If you can get something out of subcommittee, then you're probably okay. But that's a hard road for a Democrat in this environment.
It is, no question about it. Now, I know you've been an advocate on healthcare issues, and we have a real crisis here in the Commonwealth and nationally.
Yes.
Dealing with heroin addiction.
Yes.
But the precursor to that are people who take opioids.
Correct.
Talk to us about that issue.
Well, this has been something that I've been very involved with. I was contacted this past year, by a young woman whose brother died of an overdose in my community. He was in his early 20s and had just gotten out of rehab and had a relapse shortly after. So she came to me and wanted to talk about how we could get naloxone, which is the antidote to it, to an overdose, into the hands of more people. We know already that the administration has created a standing order so that anybody can go to the pharmacy and pick it up over the counter. But the problem is the people who are most in need, who are most at risk, are not going to be going to the pharmacy. They're not going to show up at CVS and say, can I have my naloxone, I'm worried. And so this bill that I've got would allow trained individuals who are working with our Department of Health and Pharmacy go out into the community and be able to give these kits to the folks who are most at risk and to their loved ones. And tomorrow that bill's going to be coming up in subcommittee. I'm very hopeful that we will get it out of subcommittee and because this is going to be able to save lives. And I know that the young woman who came to reach out to me, whose brother lived in my district, you know, this means everything to her.
Sure.
And this is why we're here, to try to help Virginians.
So this would be an expansion of what an emergency medical technician can currently do.
Correct, yeah. And it would be trained people who know what they're doing, not just willy-nilly, but people who are willing to go through a training process and go through steps in a process,
Sure.
yes.
Another health-related matter, the Whole Women's Health Act.
Mm-hmm.
Give us a little background before you talk about your specific piece of legislation.
Sure. Well, since I'm a pro-choice woman, and many people in my district are as well, this has been something that's been very important, and I hear a lot about this from my constituents. Over the past, good gracious, 15 years, Virginia has, the Virginia General Assembly has imposed restrictions that do not improve the health or welfare of the woman who is making the decision to whether or not to have an abortion. They've made restrictions on forcing them to wait 24 hours to have an ultrasound, which provides no information, because if you do an ultrasound over the belly, it doesn't give you any information. They have restricted the people who are providing abortions, treating them as though they're hospitals, even though other doctors and medical facilities like podiatrists or ophthalmologists don't have those same restrictions. So the Whole Women's Health Act, last summer, the Supreme Court deemed that in Hellerstedt that these are onerous and unconstitutional. The Whole Women's Health Act would go in and repeal all of the restrictions that have been placed in Virginia that do not improve the woman's health or welfare at all, because we do have a right to make the decision for ourselves with our medical professionals to end a pregnancy.
So where do you think that's going to wind up?
Well, I can always be optimistic that someone will realize that Virginia has no business keeping laws on the books that are unconstitutional, and I call upon my colleagues to realize that politicians do not make the best decisions for women and families, that in Virginia we always talk about respecting individuality and respecting that individuals know best for what's best for them, and I will continue to call on my colleagues to ask them to respect women and their families.
It's similar to another bill, which is a resolution that would remove from the state constitution the prohibition against gay marriage, for example.
Mm-hmm. I am a co-sponsor on that. That was something that in 2006, when that constitutional amendment passed, sickened me. I have a lot of I have families and friends who are LGBTQ. I, in fact, performed a marriage for one of my best childhood friends and his partner 3 years ago. This is something that's very close and dear to me. And again, politicians should not be focusing on who can love whom. We should be focusing on improving the economy, making sure there are jobs for everyone, making sure that our transportation works, making sure that our schools are strong. We should not be focusing and spending taxpayer dollars to disenfranchise other people.
And we should be working, I assume, on other legislation that you have introduced regarding equal pay for women.
Absolutely. You know, we still, in Virginia, we still know that 70 cents on the dollar, a woman makes 70 cents on the dollar. One of the things that I am focusing on is trying to level the playing field. We have in the code that equal pay is the law. However, we have no mechanism to make sure that that's happening. So I'm asking our General Assembly to set that up, and we'll see if that's something that my colleagues will be willing to look at.
So you have, I think, 3 specific pieces of legislation dealing with equal pay. One deals with the salary history issue you just talked about. Talk to us a little bit about what that bill would do.
Sure, and this is something that's happened. There are a few other states in the nation who have passed this, and I was listening to NPR this morning, hearing that Philadelphia has just passed this in their city code as well, where when you go for a job interview, you are not my legislation would say that you are not allowed to ask a person their past history, with the philosophy behind it being you should be able to stand in your interview and present your qualifications and earn what is appropriate for that job and for what your value is. Quite often, I'm a good example. I've worked for public service for really my whole adult life, and I spent a long time as a stay-at-home mother. When I was a stay-at-home mother, I was also doing some pretty significant jobs, raising money for our schools, working in the community as a volunteer in some very high, having some high responsibility. But if I were to ask to go for a job interview and someone said, oh, you want to be the director of this agency or this nonprofit or whatever it was, I would say, well, my last job, right now I'm making $17,500 a year. Probably as a member of the General Assembly, I probably am doing a little bit more than, my value is probably a little bit higher than that, I would say. But it also talks to, our millennials who are just getting out of college, taking jobs perhaps that are valued a little bit lower than what the work that they're doing, because the job market has been a little bit tough. So this is not only something for women, but also people who've worked in public service, men and women, and also our younger folks. You could also look on the flip side, people who are maybe nearing the end of their careers, who have been working at a very high level, and if they maybe want to step back, somebody might not even be willing to look at them if they see that they've made $150,000 and they're looking at a $70,000 job, for instance. What we want is people to look at the value of the talent that you're bringing to the table and your skills and your qualifications, not what your price tag has been.
And what about the Virginia Personnel Act? Do you have some amendments to that act as well?
Well, the concept is, we have it in the code that there should be equal pay for equal work, but there is no mechanism for making sure that we're actually doing that. I'm actually looking forward. I haven't gotten a fiscal impact statement yet from the folks who do that. It will be interesting to see if we do get one, because that will suggest to me that maybe we haven't been implementing that quite fairly yet.
Let's circle back to the schools in your district, especially K through 8, because part of the governor's budget is to hold K through 8 harmless once more, although $1 billion probably still isn't enough.
Yeah, and I live in a district that is quite diverse. Some of my schools are 80% free and reduced lunch, so you've got special needs, huge amount of special needs kids, huge amount, as I told you, English as a second language learners, We, I was just meeting with a group of teachers right before I came earlier this morning who were talking about the fact that, you know, retaining our teachers is an enormous problem because we're not able to pay them what they're worth. This has to be a highest priority for all of us in Virginia, because if we're not able to retain teachers and make sure that we're giving a high quality public education to our students, that's going to impact our ability to be a strong economic force in the future. So that's something that I care about a lot.
Sure, and I take it there are a lot of unhappy teachers based
There
upon
are.
the governor's remarks, because they were anticipating a pay raise, not only
know.
teachers, but state employees
I
in general,
know.
and now there may only be a one-time bonus.
I know, and that's troubling to me. I will be supportive wherever I can to work on increasing pay for not only for our teachers and state employees, but especially our first responders as well. The folks who are really putting themselves on the line, whether they're in the classroom or out on the streets, or we need to make sure that they know that they're our priority.
Now, what about early childhood education? How important is that to you?
Well, as someone who worked in Fairfax County and Human Services and Education were part of my portfolio, we know through many studies that every dollar you spend on a child between the years of 1 and 5, you save $20 down the line, because it's mitigating problems that will happen in the future. We should be focusing, and you know, Senator Tim Kaine, when he was governor, made that a high priority. Lieutenant Governor Northam is making that a very high priority. Having the children's cabinet that the governor set up this year is a great step to make sure that we're thinking holistically to look at early childhood education, at wellness for kids.
Now, you mentioned those indicators that may cause problems 20 years down the line, or even shorter. What about the ability of a child to read once he or she reaches the third grade at that level?
That's a huge one. In fact, they say that if the child doesn't learn to read by the 3rd grade, that's an indicator that they possibly will end up in jail at some point, which, good gracious, you know, if we know that that's a fact, and we know that we have too many people in jail, shouldn't we be putting more resources into the earliest interventions possible and making sure that we have that funding?
And so what's been the impact of the implementation of the standards of learning reforms in your school district?
I'm still listening to our teachers and to our school boards. They are pleased that we have made some changes. I'm someone who, as a mother, watching my own children in high school, learning how to take a multiple choice test and ace that test, but perhaps watch the kids not do the actual learning. I've been someone who believes that we don't need to be testing them nonstop. We need to make sure that there's flexibility in the classroom for the teachers to work with the kids, to let them do some out-of-the-box stuff. And I think we are making some strides in that. I've been very pleased. In some of the school visits last year, I watched them taking some initiatives for more holistic learning. Oakton High School is doing a great job with it. For instance, they have a whole week where students are able to, they work on a semester of deep, in-depth learning on a topic of their choice, and then they have a week of highlighting that, where they're doing public speaking and presentation, but also showing the depth of the knowledge that they've taken on, and they are even allowing the teachers to do that as well. So that's something that I've really enjoyed seeing. But I think we need to do more of it. We need to give the teachers the tools that they need to teach the kids, instead of telling them that they have to get the kids ready for all of these tests.
Right. Now, you mentioned high-tech industries in your district. One of the positive messages that the governor talked about last week related to cybersecurity and those kinds of jobs for high school students who can obtain certificates.
Yes, and I think that's great. One of the other things that I've loved is that our high schools are working with our community colleges, are working with our four-year colleges together, kind of in a seamless stream of making sure that they are having opportunities to move on and to get some of those skills. We've worked closely with NOVA and George Mason University, especially in my neck of the woods where a lot of my high school students in my district end up going to school. And it's been really nice to see that the leaders of those colleges and universities have a commitment to making sure that the students have the opportunity to learn, and especially in the cybersecurity areas.
And I think most people don't realize that George Mason is now the largest, at least in terms of
Right.
student body, the largest university in the Commonwealth.
In the Commonwealth, yes. And I've had an opportunity to sit down with Angel Cabrera, the president, to listen to him about the types of initiatives that he's been taking, and I've been very impressed. He also has a very strong commitment to diversity in the classroom, which I very much appreciate as well.
And of course, the cost of higher education keeps going up and up, and you're dealing this session with a budget that's got a significant hole to fill in it. How do you think things are going to work out?
That's, you know, the budget situation, I'm hopeful, is going to continue to get better. Our last quarter looked better than the second quarter did. Again, making sure that college affordability is something that everybody has a chance to have a higher education, I think, is so important. And we're going to be looking at a difficult budget, though, and I'm very cognizant of that fact, and I'm trying to be sensitive as I'm making decisions about what I'm going to be supporting. But education has to be the top, I think.
Got about a minute and a half
Okay.
left, but transportation is always an issue. Talk to us about some of the transportation needs in your district and how that's being dealt with by the Commonwealth Transportation Board.
Well, you know, I will be having 2 metro stations in my district that are being built on the Silver Line. That, making sure that our metro system is soluble and functioning is probably my highest priority. I also do a lot of work with VDOT just to make sure that the smaller improvements are continually taking place. I'm very pleased that we do have a priority program as far as from the 2013 legislation to make sure that we're really looking at moving traffic through, reducing congestion, making sure that we're prioritizing based on need as opposed to political will. Before we came to session, I went with a group of my colleagues on a tour all around Northern Virginia that was hosted and organized by Delegate Vivian Watson, Senator Dave Marston, to look at all the different improvements that we are making, and it's quite impressive to see.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, Delegate Jennifer Boysko.
Thank you so much, Woody. It's been my pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association. Until next time, I am Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.